Welcome to my mini watercolor workshop. Today we are going to talk about color wheels and how to create a study journal for watercolor. I'm going to write watercolor journal on the top. I'm going to write my name on the top so that I know that it's mine. For my book, what I did was I took watercolor paper and I cut it into 4 smaller pieces. I hole punched it and put a string through it so I could turn the pages easily. We're going to start out by sectioning our watercolor journal into 6 sections. One section will have a color wheel. The next section will have gradients with complementary colors. The next section will have warm colors, then cool colors. Then there will be a section for warm and cool neutrals. I'll guide you through each of these steps so you know exactly what to do. Let's start with our color wheel. Make sure that you have 2 bowls of water, a paper towel, your watercolors ready, and obviously a brush. I start with my red paint on top and then my blue. I start with the darkest colors just because you don't want to start with yellow and then have to really wash your brush. I leave space in between the primary colors and I put them in a triangle so that I can make sure to have lots of space to mix new colors. After I add yellow, I need to start creating my secondary colors. Secondary colors are mixed from primary colors. Blue and red make purple. You might have learned this in grade school, but maybe you forgot. I try to mix less blue, a little bit more red, because generally blue is going to be darker than red and it's going to overpower the red. In between blue and violet will be blue-violet. So it's just basically a violet with a little bit more blue. Got a little too much water? I'm going to take some of that out with my brush and just pat it on my paper towel. Next, I'm going to make red-violet. This is a violet with a little bit more red. It's all about balance. Sometimes it takes some time to get exactly the color you want. Don't be afraid to mix for a little while, or maybe mix a little bit of the color in a palette before you add it to your paper. Next, I'm going to mix yellow and red to make orange. I'm adding a little bit of red so that I can control the amount that I use. Do you notice that tiny dot? That is going to be the yellow-orange color. So I've got a little bit more yellow, a little bit less yellow, and for the last yellow-orange color, I'm going to add a lot of yellow with just a dot of red to make yellow-orange. Some people like to draw out their color wheel or make it into a cool design. I'm just kind of doing it in the simplest way possible to show you how it works. Notice how I added a little bit more red to that orange red just to make it a little bit different from the yellow or the orange in the middle. Now it's time for green. I'm starting with blue so that I don't mix my yellow with blue into it. And every time, you don't see this, but off camera, I am dipping my brush into the dirty water and then into the clean water to make sure that I'm always painting with clean water. So there's my yellow-green. I'm going to add a little bit more blue on the side to my blue-green. And there I have my color wheel. Notice that every color is different, and the only ones that are out of the palette are the 3 primary colors. Now we're ready to paint our gradients. If you don't remember how to paint gradients, do some more practice. You can go back to the gradient video and practice that skill again. I am going to go warm to cool on all of these, which means that the complements are always going to be cool while we're going to start with warm colors. So I'm going to start with red. The complement of red is green. So watch as I blend red into green, and there will be a neutral color in the middle. Just kind of start with a little bit on each side. And what I'm doing is I'm cleaning my brush off between every single time you see my brush leave the paper. I am cleaning it off. First dipping it in the dirty water and then into the clean water. And I'm making sure that I have a really clean brush. If I have to dab it on the paper towel, looks like I have too much water, so I'm going to dab it with the paper towel and take some of that water out. And that's a great way to remove mistakes or to fix up your watercolor. You can always dab it while it's wet and fix it up a little bit. Now I'm just going to smooth that out a little bit. And it doesn't have to be perfect. What you're trying to do is create a neutral in the middle from 2 complementary colors. Next, I'm going to move on to my orange and blue. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to speed this up a little bit. So watch as I do all three. You can paint your gradients horizontal or vertical, whatever works for you. I also did a little square of the neutral that I made in the middle of each one, and you can tell how different they are. It's kind of fun. I'm making sure to label everything so I remember what it all is and what it all means. Usually I think I'm going to remember, but I never do, so it's a good idea to write stuff down. Next, we're going to move on to warm and cool colors. Let's take a minute and talk about warm and cool colors. Red, orange, yellow, and yellow-green are all warm colors on one side of the color wheel, while on the other side of the color wheel you'll find blues, violets, and turquoises, which are cool. You can see how I've divided the warm and cool colors on the study page. I am going to start adding my warm colors square by square. I'm going to start out with the obvious ones, red and orange and yellow. Those are pretty obvious, but when you get to the greens and the purples, you want to think greens with a lot of yellow, purples with a lot of red. You can mix a little bit of brown into something. That kind of tends to go into the neutral territory, but as long as you can tell what color it is, like this one is kind of an orangey brown. Think fall colors. And make as many as you can until you run out of ideas. Leave a little space because you might be able to make more. This depends on the kind of watercolors you have. If you have a watercolor palette with tons of colors in it and a lot of really strong pigments, you can make more colors than if you have a basic watercolor palette. I'm doing this with a basic Praying watercolor palette so that it's really accessible to anyone. These are like $3. Anyone can do this. I'm going to talk more in another class about the fancy watercolors and what you can do with those, but this is just what you can do with the basic stuff. So make as many colors as you can. Really get creative. Try to make sure that your colors are different, even if they look a little bit the same. One secret is to add more water and make a lighter and a darker version of each color. And you could do that top to bottom. You could get really organized with this. Make a really dark red. Make a light red with just a dot of red with a tiny bit of water in it. Look at that, I'm adding a green, but I'm going to add yellow to that, and I'm going to make it a very, very warm green. Sometimes you have to look at your colors and think, what can I make now? What can I create? I'm just going to make a lighter version of a new one. Lighter version of one that I already made. And it's really yellow. You could actually do this. You could do, many, many versions of the same color and really vary that. And it's a lot of fun. Now let's move down into cool colors. Move into your blues and greens and purples. Think winter colors. Think cool. And you can make a dark blue. You could make a blue with really a tiny bit of blue. You can make a blue black, so adding a little bit of black to a blue or a purple, a purpley blue. You can make a green that has a lot of blue in it. Basically, blue is your base color. Believe it or not, even warm colors can have a cooler or a warmer version to them. There can be a cooler red and a warmer red. If you've ever gone lipstick shopping and you know that there's a blue red and an orange red, There's a blue that can be warmer and a blue that can be cooler. That's really getting into a lot of color theory, but it's a lot of fun. I am going to just speed this up while I make the rest of my blues. And purples and turquoises, everything has a cool tone, and you can see how I'm trying to mix as many different colors as possible. So take your time on these. If you need to mix your colors in a separate palette, do that. I tend to mix right on the paper, but I've been painting a long time, so I feel really comfortable doing that. I'm now going to move over to the section reserved for my neutrals. Neutrals are complementary colors mixed together. So these might be easier for you to mix in a separate palette because they're a little bit more complicated. But basically what you want to do is you want to look at your color wheel, pick the color directly across from the other color in your color wheel, and you will have its opposite. So you can go red and green, you can go orange and blue, you can go violet red with yellow green. All of those combinations will make slightly different neutrals. So it gives you a lot of browns and grays and colors that you can really use to make your paintings look richer and more dimensional. I know it seems weird to fill an entire page with various colors of like blah, but once you start painting, you realize how important those blah colors really are. These are my warm neutrals. So you can see that they are warm colors. They have undertones of yellows and reds. So basically what you want to do when you're making these neutrals is put more of the yellow and red colors into those than you would the blues and greens and cool colors. Now I'm going to start creating the cool neutrals. These are more gray and they have blue undertones, so they're still going to be those complementary colors together, but you are going to use more of the cool color in the complementary pair to create neutrals that are a little bit just more gray. They'll be kind of a blue black or a brownish that's got a blue undertone. So watch as I make those. The secret to making all of these colors with watercolor is basically using the primaries in as many possible combinations as you can. You don't need a bunch of paint, you just need 3 good primaries that you really like, and you can mix every color.